Hi, Gabby from Ray Studios, and today I'm going to be reviewing the Canon EOS 90D. So first, let's talk about design. Just by holding this camera, I can tell you, this is one of the best design cameras I ever touched in my whole life. It reminded me a little bit of the Nikon D90, one of my first DSLR cameras. If you've been shooting with a GH5 or GH5As, this grip will feel very familiar. It's quite rounded. Basically, everything falls right in place. I like the way my hands naturally grip the camera, how both fingers naturally fall into one into the shutter dial and the other one into the aperture dial. They also have the multi-directional pad, the set button in the center. We have a joystick and a very fast way to change between photos and video mode. Now, for all those people that have the Canon EOS R, as a matter of fact, I have, and I'm shooting this video on the Canon EOS R, pretty much all the complaints of all the people out there on YouTube have been addressed. So we have a physical joystick instead of a touch bar. People have complained on the EOS R that you have to touch two buttons to switch into video. Here is just a quick switch. And to be honest, I prefer the aperture dial down here than actually up in here. So pretty good design. On top of that, as usual with Canon, we get the fantastic swivel screen that is not just good for blogging, but I use it a lot for photography at complicated angles. Another little detail that I noticed here, this is rubberized and it's really good quality. It feels really good to the touch, something I haven't seen on any camera really. It feels really nice. Something that I also like is that they use the LP6 batteries, which is the same that I have on my Canon EOS R, 5D Mark II, 3, 4, you name it. These batteries are very useful. I can use to power my HDMI monitors, so it's pretty cool really. There are no complaints whatsoever when it comes to the design of this camera. It feels very well balanced with the kit lens. Now let's go out and take some pictures. So if you're thinking about buying the Canon EOS 90D, it is very possible that you are a beginner with serious intentions, or a professional on a budget, or you could be a professional who already happen to have something like a 5D Mark IV, Canon EOS R, 1DX, and then you need a backup camera. And there is also the possibility of blogging. As a matter of fact, this might be one of the best blogging cameras right now in the market, but we're going to talk about that a little bit later. I'm going to first talk a little bit about photography. So let's say that, like I say, you're just a beginner with some serious intentions. You might buy this camera with the kit lens. I gotta say, back in the day I used to have the Canon 60D, and the kit lens looks a lot bigger than that. And it was the same, 18 to 135. And I like what they did with the lens. Now we have a lock, it's much smaller, it feels really good in the hand. It's all plastic, but it feels really good. I took some pictures with it, and to be honest, pictures looks really nice. As usual, Canon colors are really good, straight out of the camera, so you won't have to deal with so much editing on post-production or Lightroom, whatever it is that you use. And like I say, it handles really good, and with the kit lens, you get pretty decent quality, pretty decent pictures, but you're gonna make the most out of it when you use other lenses, such as prime lenses and maybe L lenses from Canon. So we're gonna test that out. Cancun crab. We have this sweet Thai kit, and basically I set it to high frame rate, and it feels good. It feels really fast. Later I'm gonna check if the shots were accurate, but it feels really good, very fast. That's what this camera intended to shoot fast action. So far so good. So we were too hot outdoors. It was like somewhere over 30 degrees. I was getting all sweat. So we came here for a lemonade peach drink. Kind of a weird combination, but it's not bad actually. And I got the opportunity to get some of the lenses that I wanted to show you, to which later on I'm gonna be testing this camera on. And that is the 24-105 f4L. So if you're a professional, you might consider something like this. for both video and photography. You should definitely consider one of these. This is the Nifty 50, and doesn't matter what camera you have, you should always get a Nifty 50 in your backpack. So useful, so cheap, and you get amazing pictures with it. Another lens that I'm going to be testing now is this Beast, which is the Sigma 120 to 400 millimeters. And the reason for that is because this camera, having a high frame rate of 10 shots per second, this is probably very useful for wildlife photography and sport photography. So this kind of lens is going to be very likely that people who do this kind of photography is going to end up with some setup like this. So the crop factor of 1.6 basically is going to give you like 340 millimeters, which is phenomenal for either wildlife or sports. So I'm going to be testing this out as well. And the other thing that I'm going to be testing out a little bit, and I'm going to be talking a little bit, is how does this compare with the Sony a6400, which they're very similarly priced. So here we have first the Sony a6400 at 4K 24p, and as you can see, it's pretty sharp. The colors, when it comes from compared to some of the older Sony cameras, they're so much better. By the way, I'm using the same lens on both cameras, so it's the Canon 24 to 105 and the Sigma NC11. And now I'm using the same lens, but without an adapter because it's not needed, on the Canon 90D. And you can see the 4K actually is up to the challenge. It's really good, but it's 30p, so that's kind of annoying. And in this case, because dual pixel AF, it works, as I didn't have AF on the Sony, but I do have in this one because I'm using a Canon lens on both cameras. I wanted to compare with the exact same lens, and you can see the AF, it's a little bit nervous. It's not the best I ever seen. And here you have the two cameras together, and you can see the crop factor in the Sony is 1.5, in the Canon is 1.6, so it's a little bit tighter with the exact same lens. And to be honest, Canon 90D, right on, that 4K looking pretty good. I guess the Sony looks a little bit better, but very hard to tell, really, and when it comes to sharpness at least. And here is the 1080p on the Sony Go first. Like I say, there is no AF, so don't look at the autofocus. It's basically manual focus. It's just kind of like eyeball the autofocus and shooting an f4 in the Canon 24 to 105. And here is the Canon 90D with the same lens, and in this there is autofocus. And the 1080p, it looks good, looks alright, to be honest. It's nothing super impressive. And I noticed that the autofocus works a little bit better on 1080p. You can see it by yourself. Here we have the slow motion that finally Canon decided to get 120 frames per second at 1080p. And here is the Canon 90D that looks alright, looks kind of decent, but the Sony looks better, looks actually much better. And not only that, it records with audio and continuous autofocus, so huge advantage for the Sony in the slow motion department. And now let's take some pictures and look at it with the different lenses. So now we are gonna do a vlogging test. The 90D is still in my hand. That's not the camera I'm using for vlogging. It's actually a Canon EOS R, which is the camera I've been using for shooting this whole video. I got now, instead of a lavalier like I used to have for the entire video, now I got the DT-D3 Pro mounted on the camera. And I'm using the 16 to 35mm f4L IS, and I'm using it at 26mm. That's the equivalent of this camera if I use it at the widest end, which is 60mm. So let's see how the 90D performs on the same setup as the Canon EOS R with the same microphone, same lens. Here we are. This is the Canon EOS R. I put it down. and I'm vlogging now with the 90D, which, believe it or not, it feels a little bit lighter, but I think it's not really lighter, it's that the lens doesn't have the adapter now, so it's a little bit shorter, and it's not front heavy anymore. That was what making the camera on the EOS R so heavy. So I'm still using the same lens, the same microphone, DT-D3 Pro. The lens is the Canon 16-35mm f4L-IS. So I have the stabilization turned on both cameras, so we can really test the, how it will look without any cropping or any crazy stuff like that. One thing that I want to tell you immediately out of the bat is that the preamps on both cameras are set at the exact same level, which means probably the same preamps. The Canon EOS R and the 90D happen to have the same preamps. I'm gonna walk a little bit so I can give you more of like a vlogging feel. I'm fully manual, by the way. That's why when it gets a little brighter, it gets too bright. But yeah, you can get a feeling of how it will be to vlog with this camera. To be honest, still a little bit heavy. I mean, it's probably the lens that is a big lens, but yeah, it's not particularly a very lightweight camera. So if you're gonna do a lot of vlogging, I guess that the Canon EOS M6 Mark II might be a better choice. It's smaller, more compact. Maybe you can put a smaller microphone on top and have like maybe the 10 to 18 millimeters ultra wide angle lens that is designed for aps-c and not this beast that is designed for full frame. It will make it a lot lighter, more comfortable to vlog, especially if you're gonna vlog for a long time. I think the audio is going to be pretty good because on the Canon EOS R it is pretty good and it have the same preamp, so it should sound good. Alright, that's it. There is electronic image stabilization turned on. I have the IS on the lens, and there is a little bit of a crop, but it's really not that much. It's pretty decent. I mean, I can still vlog. And in case you wonder, this is the in-built microphone in the camera. I removed the DT-D3 Pro, so I don't know, do you notice a big difference? By the way, is the footage smooth enough for you? Let me know in the comment section down below. And while I was comparing with the Sony, I noticed that the focusing system wasn't tracking me so well. Well, it wasn't tracking my subject well, but we tested here again and it looks really good. I guess sometimes you might get a little bit confused with some more busy backgrounds, but here they just have me and the background is not that complex. It's tracking really, really well. And it's also like, it have eye autofocus that it chooses the eye that is closest to the camera, and it's pretty damn impressive, to be honest. So the Canon 90D was a nice surprise. Lately, all the latest Canon camera releases, they've been a surprise, but not in a good way. There is always some complaints when it comes to design, like the Canon EOS R that is showing me right now, that you have a touch bar and the dials are up here. This one, when it comes to design, is one of the most comfortable cameras I have used in a very, very long time. The dial is on the right place where I like it, like on the 5Ds. They have a joystick, like the more professional cameras, like the 5D Mark III, Mark IV. Flip-up screen, super useful for everybody, but specifically for bloggers, because you can see yourself. There is a microphone jack input, of course, but there is something new here, which is the headphone jack input. So there is really not much to complain about this camera. Design-wise, it's phenomenal. You can use it for blogging. Remember, there is 4K, no cropping. And of course, when this camera came out, everybody was like, oh my God, there is no 24 frames per second. Let's trash this thing. Ah! And yeah, apparently there's a firmware update coming up very, very soon for this camera that is gonna basically allow you to shoot at 24 frames per second. So no worries there as well. So this might be one of the most compelling cameras there is now from Canon. And it's probably gonna take a bit of the market of some of the other cameras like Sony and Nikon. And it's really good. And I like the fact that it's DSLR and you also can shoot through the screen with dual pixel AF autofocus. And the autofocus is really fast on either one. I mean, with the optical viewfinder, it's phenomenal. It's very fast. On the screen with the dual pixel AF, it's also pretty fast. It's surprisingly good. So all in all, fantastic. And by the way, there is also 120 frames per second at 1080p, which is, I believe, is a first for Canon, without going into cinema cameras, of course. But really, really good camera. I highly recommend it. This is Gabi, and say